I don't know how I can live up to that, but whatever. So yeah, I'm Mark. I work at GitHub. If you can see the title on the slide, we don't actually have titles, but one of the funny things about GitHub is our internal team app lets anybody else assign a title to you. And someone assigned me Senior Principal DevOps Postmortem Architect. So that's, I guess, my title. But really, what I want to talk about is communicating both during and after an outage. And the reason we need to do that is because, as Jesse said, and if this thing works, maybe it doesn't, maybe I just got to tap it. All software is horrible. So Jesse knew and wrote his slides on index cards, and I'm just going to keep this one up here so we can all remember that all software is horrible, and that's why we're doing this, because things break, and we have to talk about it. And how we talk about that is really something that can differentiate the way that our customers are, the way our businesses are perceived to our customers in a pretty significant way. So first, kind of during the incident, this is this is a blog post written by David Heinemeier Hansen at 37 Signals, where I had the pleasure to work. And one of the things he talks about here is that we tend to use these kind of weaselly words. Like, we say we apologize for any inconvenience this may have caused you, and that's bullshit. That doesn't mean anything. No one cares. That doesn't sound sincere. I hate it. Like, don't use those words. It's very simple. We apologize. Like, do you believe me? Any inconvenience this may have caused you. You rely on my service and I was down. Of course it caused me inconvenience, you dipshit. So just for the purposes of full disclosure, this is the GitHub status site. Elevated what? Elevated error rates, blah, 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 whatever. That doesn't mean anything. We screw it up too. So this is actually really hard. We also apologize for inconvenience. And that was pretty recent. That was like a week ago. So we screw it up too. But you know, it's really hard. And the reason it's hard is because you tend to write these things in the spur of the moment when things are broken. And one of the ways we're trying to fix it, this is actually really hard. I'd love to get some feedback from people, but one of the things we're thinking about doing and we're working on is trying to build some generic, and I don't want to be generic. We want to build specific error messages that we can post for specific kind of events that we see. But that's really hard because those are also impersonal. So, you know, there's a really difficult balance to find. I haven't found it yet, but not using "we apologize for any inconvenience" is a good start. Also, I didn't mention this at the beginning, but please, I only have about 15 minutes worth of material, and this is a 30-minute slot, so if you don't ask questions, we're going to be out of here really quick. But again, sincerity. You have to be sincere with these kinds of messages. This applies both during the outage and after the outage, right? If customers think you're being insincere, if they think that you don't really care about solving their problems, and let's face it, we wouldn't be doing this work, we wouldn't be on call all the time, we wouldn't be getting out of bed at 3 a.m. to fix problems if we didn't care about the state of our service and our customers. So all we have to do is let that come through in these messages. It's not complicated, just be sincere. And personality doesn't hurt either. So this is one thing that I'm also torn on a little bit. At GitHub, we have this thing we call a unicorn. And this is the error page you get when we run out of unicorn processes, right? The unicorn web server. When we run out of application server processes to handle requests. This is what the error page looks like. It's a unicorn. It says we're having a bad day. And a lot of times in our status messages, this is the kind of error that we get when almost anything on the back end breaks. Unicorns are what happens, at least as far as the customer is concerned. So we'll often on the status site saying we're investigating unicorns. We'll post more updates when we have more information, that kind of thing. And you know, there's personality there because unicorns are something that GitHub customers see and that they know what that means and they can relate to it. But at the same time, if they're new, if they're not part of the community, they don't know what the hell that means. So there's again a balancing act here. We like it, we'll probably keep doing it, but you know, it's one of those things that I'm not convinced that we're doing it right there either. I think on balance, more people like it than don't, so we'll probably stick with it. But there's no kind of silver bullet there. Black Swan? It's a unicorn. This is another one. So update frequently. I don't know about you guys, but when my upstream internet provider is down and they tell me things are down and we're working on it and I don't see an update for 2 hours, I wonder if they're like, you know, if they're still working on it or if they decided to screw it, we're going out for beers. There's nothing worse as a customer of any service than being in the dark when things are down. So this is a really simple one. Well, it seems simple. Update users frequently, right? Make sure they know what's going on. Make sure they know you're still working on the problem. You don't have to be super detailed. Even a very simple, we're still working on the problem, we don't have anything else to report, goes miles towards solving this. What's next? Yeah, so this is an example of what happens when you don't do that. Tumblr, and again, GitHub screws up stuff too. So when I call people out, it's not because I hate them, it's just because they screwed up, and they're a good example. Tumblr, back in the end of 2010, had an outage that lasted something like a day and a half. And from my recollection, they updated their customers exactly 3 times. The first time they posted, we're having database problems and we're working on it, we'll update soon, and then 17 hours went by. And I don't even use Tumblr, but I was pissed off. Like, I couldn't care less about Tumblr, but it made me upset to be in the same industry as people who would treat their customers that way. Yeah, Cliff. Dude, I wish. But it's awesome. I didn't even notice. That's awesome. I wish. Yes, it's on purpose. So the problem with doing that, there's a lot of problems with doing this, right? So first of all, you're disrespecting customers. But if you open your status with, we're experiencing database problems and we're working on it, and you don't tell anybody anything for 17 hours, what are they going to assume? They're going to assume this. Oops, we lost all your data.
Too soon.
It's been 4 years, John. And it was a bad day, and it could happen to anybody, right? It's not about the fact that they lost all the data, but this is what customers are going to assume, and this is what I thought. I was like, oh shit, Tumblr just lost all their customers' data, and they're trying to figure out what the hell to do. Because it's been 17 hours. What other possible explanation? They can't just hate their customers that much. Of course, they don't have customers because nobody can give them money, but that's a different discussion. So this is sort of a counterexample. This is GitHub. We had a pretty significant outage back on the 22nd and 23rd of December. It was long enough that it went over both days. And even this isn't perfect. This is not good enough updates frequently, because we started a maintenance in the morning, we had some problems, we rolled back, we sort of went along through the day, we kept customers updated, we're working on it, the site is mostly working, and then the site went down again, hard. And we updated people, and at most there's probably an hour and a half gap, I think, in here, which is not enough. But this at least kind of gives you the idea of, we were only down for a total of 5 hours here, and we updated the status like a dozen-ish times. Tumblr was down for a day and a half, updated it 3 times. I think you should update more than we did. You should definitely update more than Tumblr did. When we were at Heroku, we had sort of an internal guideline where we wanted to update a status site every 20 minutes if we were down. And if, for some reason, we didn't think there was going to be a state change within that 20 minutes, we would at least post a status update that says, well, here's the current status, we're going to update it again in 2 hours with an update, and we'll update it sooner if anything changes. So I think that's a really good sort of rule of thumb. Update no more than 20 or 30 minutes apart. And you need to manage expectations, right? So like I said, if you don't think you're going to have an update in 20 minutes, let customers know when you will have an update. And make it easy. Make it super easy to update status. So the way that we do that is in Campfire, we have chat ops. So it's very easy for anybody to update a status. You just /status, yellow or red, and a message, and boom, it gets updated on the status site. It gets tweeted. Everyone knows what's going on. When you're done, status green, everything goes back to normal. Super simple. Even that's not necessarily simple enough, though. Another trick that we've found useful is delegate. So when you're in an incident and you're trying to solve the problem, it's not always easy to distract yourself even for 30 seconds to update the status site. Because it's simple to update it. You type /status, blah, 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 but you have to think about what you want to say. And doing the cognitive switch to go from head down, interneting, to thinking about what you want to say and posting it to the status site can be difficult. So it's useful at times to delegate someone, say, you're responsible for updating the status. Pay attention to what's going on in Campfire. If you don't know what the status update should be, ask the incident commander, and every N number of minutes or hours or whatever, update status. That's your job right now. Support teams, customer support, whatever your community teams, those kinds of teams can be hugely helpful here. And we had a lot of success with that at Heroku as well. We would get our support team to help out with status updates. So now we get to the senior DevOps, technical principle, postmortem architect crap, whatever. After action reports, right? This is where you can turn a really bad situation into a less bad situation. It turns out that customers really, really want to know what happened. And a good after action report or postmortem can generate a huge amount of goodwill. We have seen over and over again I've been doing this for a very long time, which is why I have lots of these postmortem practice. I've been doing this for a long time, and I've seen over and over again that the number of positive messages that we get from customers after a good postmortem is vastly in excess of the number of complaints we get from customers due to a bad outage. Because customers just want to know what's going on. They want to trust you. They chose your business. They want you to validate that decision. They want to trust you. And all you have to do is reciprocate. So step one, I should back up. There's exactly 3 things you have to do in one of these postmortems for it to be successful. That's it, just 3. There's some nuances I'll talk about in a minute, but the first one is apologize, and you would be astonished how many people get this wrong and don't apologize, or they bury the lead and they say, I'm sorry, in like the 1 paragraph from the end. Apologize up front, very beginning, very personal. Not, we apologize for any inconvenience. Say you're sorry, mean it. If you can't say you're sorry and mean it, get out of this business. Questions?
Do the lawyers push back at all on this?
I don't ever ask them. Yeah, I don't think so, no. I've been in companies that have had concerns about lawyers and things like that in the past, but it's never ever been an issue. So yeah, I don't see there's no legal issues with apologizing, especially if you mean it. So this is a case where, this is a Cloudflare postmortem. It was pretty recent, not from the DDoS last week, it was from a previous one. It's actually a pretty good technical write-up of what happened. The only issue I have with it is way down there at the bottom, 1 paragraph from the end, the word sorry appears exactly 1 time. And I do believe they were sorry, but I think they screwed up the form, and I think they should have brought that more up front, and they should have made it more apparent instead of treating it like a big sterile communication to customers that these are the technical reasons why we were down. I think that a little humanity goes a long way. And just the counterexample, this is one I wrote. Again, I don't always get it right, but this is one thing I always do. First paragraph, I apologize. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. This is another one. It's not we're very sorry as a company. It's I, the person who wrote this, am very sorry this happened, and our whole team is working hard to keep it from happening again, or to prevent similar problems. Actually, never say that we're going to completely prevent it, but we're going to work hard to try to. So the second thing you have to do for one of these to be successful is to demonstrate understanding of the problem. So customers want to know you're sorry. They want to know you know what happened, and they want to know you thoroughly understand what happened. And this one's a little tricky because you really need to know your audience here, because the level of demonstrating your understanding can vary pretty widely. So, if you're Etsy and your customers are people who sell handmade goods, they're not technical. They're not Heroku customers. They're not GitHub customers. They don't care about spanning tree. They don't care about whatever. They don't care about any of your technical details. None of those things are important to them. They couldn't care less. But they do want to know that you know what happened. And if you could talk about that at a high level for those kind of customers, if you could talk about it at a deeper level for customers that it makes sense for, it's just a matter of knowing your audience, right? So demonstrate that you have a solid understanding of what happened. Like I said, know your audience. And there's definitely a lot of art to it, right? It's not just a matter of, even for really, really technically savvy audiences, there's still a balance, right? You don't want to tell them everything that you did for 7 hours while you were troubleshooting this problem and every wrong path you went down and every possible little detail, because they don't care about those things either, but they do want to know at a high level that you understand the problem. And this is the last thing that you have to do to get it right. When you're writing one of these postmortems, you got to explain how you're going to fix it, right? What steps you intend to take as a company and as a team to try to mitigate these sorts of problems in the future. This is generally just a simple list, right? We're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this other thing. We're going to practice doing this thing over here. We're going to make sure we buy more disks. We're going to whatever the situation happened to be. Give people the concrete steps you're going to take and the timing so that they know what to expect. And this is actually a really good forcing function internally as well, right? If you provide customers a list of remediation items and you give them some timing, and you screw it up, and they call you on it, you look like a big jerk. And you are a big jerk because you didn't do what you said you were going to do. So explain how you're going to fix it. And if you do those three things, you're going to have a successful postmortem, and you'll be astonished at how much positive feedback you can get and how much goodwill you can generate after even a really, really bad outage. Now, there's some other nuances. This is one of my favorites. Bullshit, not allowed. Don't try to bullshit your customers. Don't try to bury them in technical detail. Don't make things up. Don't sugarcoat things. Don't, even if you aren't prepared to admit you screwed up, don't post the postmortem. If you're not prepared to admit that your company screwed up, if you're not prepared to own your availability, if you're not prepared to take the blame, don't post it. Don't try to deflect. Don't try to sugarcoat things. Don't try to mislead. All of those things can turn a bad situation even worse, right? Because it's the internet. They're going to find out. Also, I didn't list this as a slide, but don't read Hacker News after you write one of these. Unless you want them to fix all your problems for you, because they can do that.
Use Redis.
So keep it classy. That's right, just use Redis. So keep it classy in the postmortems. This is one that really infuriates me when companies throw their vendors under the bus. My site is down because my network vendor switch had a bug. And you care about that in terms of knowing that I understand what happened, but you don't care about that in terms of knowing that it was this specific vendor and this was the problem they had and this was my switch model and I hate them and they're assholes. It's my fault. I chose them. I chose to be their customer. I built my architecture in a way that could be affected by their device in this way. It's not their fault. It's my fault. Take the blame. Don't post that Amazon is down again, because if you didn't know that going in, you shouldn't be in this business either. So keep it classy. Take the blame. It's your fault. It's your infrastructure. You made the decisions to make it the way that it is. Own it. So recap. This is my last slide. So again, if you don't have questions, we're going to be out of here and have a quick break. Step one, apologize. Mean it. Two, demonstrate that you know what happened, right? These are the details, in as much detail as you think is appropriate for your audience. And the last thing, tell them what you're going to do to fix it. And, again, if you do those three things, positive results, it's amazing. Yeah?
I have a small question. So I want to say, you talked about how you can comment if you update the status.
Yep.
And I'm wondering whether that works well with a situation where your head is on fire and you're exhausted. And you have the ability, the same ability to spare a coworker, you can tell all your customers and the entire world something, whether that should be equal.
I think it's a matter of trusting your employees and coworkers, right? If you can't trust them with the keys to your servers, you certainly can't trust them. I mean, if you can trust them with the keys to your servers and your customers' data and the stability of your business, you can certainly trust them to communicate that outage message at 3 a.m. And if you can't, then you need a new team.
I'm not suggesting that there has to be a lot of stuff, but if you said you really want to say this, that you might have a typo in this room.
Sure.
You can talk to them, is this the message? And you say yes, that.
Yeah, maybe. We don't have a whole lot of Hubot workflows that are like that, just because it's annoying. But you're totally right. There's a possibility, and this is one of the reasons why we kicked around having some canned messages that we could post or customize. But I have, again, my trouble with those is they're not personal enough. So no, we don't have any confirmation in Hubot about that today, and I doubt we would, but I can see where you're coming from. Yeah.
Talk briefly about how you handle the postmortem discussion internally.
Yeah, that's a whole talk. We should probably have that outside somewhere because that's going to take way too long, and we should get John involved. First, I start with blaming people, and then the threats.
Mark, can you repeat what they're asking?
Do you blame John?
See, John is nodding his head. He agrees.
What was the question?
Oh, sorry. The question was, how do we approach internal postmortems? And I said that's way too long a topic for right now.
Probably should care about these things. What time zone do you use your status?
UTC, I think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure our status site is in UTC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mark, this is going to be a compliment to the question to the audience. I mean, this whole trend for transparent postmortems,
I think, and I correct me if I'm wrong, the first communication with this and I think it changed a lot of the industry when you see Amazon and all these companies. And maybe I just like you so much that that's my conclusion. I wonder if anybody else thinks that. So I remember when I was out, so Jesse Roberts made a big deal about, hey, this is the way to, transparency.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I invented anything new. I think it's just respect for customers, and I think there's a lot of other people that have done it that maybe just haven't been as high profile. And there's the old Transparent Uptime blog that had some really good examples of this. So I don't think I invented anything new, but I do think I have a pretty simple formula that can be useful for other people. So yeah, she said she thinks respect for customers might be seen as a novel approach, and unfortunately, that's probably true.
It seems to me that while you have the attention of your customers, you have all of this outage going on. They really care that you're having this issue. But at what point, so you explain remediation, right? At what point do you lose the attention of your customer and are no longer accountable for those changes? Do you, at some point, decide that you want to publish changes that you're planning to make to your infrastructure and be open about the infrastructure that you're actually building out and those sorts of things? It seems like some sort of disconnect perhaps between while you're having an issue and what happens after. You know, what are your plans? How do you build out that?
Sure.
Communicate changes.
Yeah, so long question. Let me see if I can boil it down. We talk about remediation when we have a big problem, and then we don't talk about it again, basically ever. And we don't tell customers what our plans are to improve availability and uptime. I think you're probably right. I think that, in the past I've talked about the infrastructure companies that I've worked at. I know Etsy has done some of the similar kinds of things. But we don't do it regularly enough, and I don't think there's really any deep, dark secrets that keep us from doing it. I think a lot of companies think that there are. None of the ones I've ever worked at really think that way, but I think it's just that we're all lazy. Really, that's the honest truth. I think it's just that it's time-consuming to update those kinds of things. I do think that once you get it in writing like this, though, you lose their attention until you have a similar outage. And when you have the same kind of outage and you didn't follow up on the remediation steps, they remember in a hurry. Tom?
So this is a blanket question, and I know it doesn't apply to everyone, but customers are really, really smart. So why can't we have the graphs too?
We give them to you. Have you seen the GitHub status site?
Not lately.
We give you the graphs.
Well, maybe
Next
not for
question.
GitHub, but for everybody else.
I don't know. We do it at GitHub. I can understand why some people are afraid of it, but we have a subset of the graphs that pull from the same graphite source as the ones that we look at in ops on our status site. So, and we also have the status site automatically change to yellow and red and things like that when it sees problem states. So we totally do that today.
Totally awesome.
Tom, I argue that not all customers
Totally.
Either want or could understand the graphs.
True.
I have customers like that.
Yeah, probably should not see the graphs.
Yeah.
But if you're providing a highly technical service, so I don't want to call anybody out, but
Oh no, I understood. But what I'm saying is that I think what you're saying is reasonable, but it's context and business specific.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. It goes back to the know your audience point from earlier. Over here, I think was.
All of the Hubot plugins that you guys use internally, are those available for the public?
No, because like Jesse said, they're shitty CoffeeScript. There's multiple answers to that. Most of them are really bad CoffeeScript. One of them that I actually really suggest, we have a simple CoffeeScript thing that is basically a bridge to shell scripts that are in a specific directory. So we can extend Hubot by writing shell scripts and dropping them in a specific directory with a specific naming scheme. And we do that for a lot of the ops stuff that we have. In case Hubot is down, we can drive the commands with exactly the same parameters as we would use in chat through a shell script interface. And most of them just aren't available because like our status one wouldn't work with your status site. It works with the status site rework.
Right. When I looked into Hubot, the vast majority of plugins I found were like pictures of pugs and Chuck Norris.
Oh, we do tons of those too.
Those are all public.
And those are awesome.
So I probably speak for more than myself. I don't care if it goes to put it out there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know which ones are useful. That's the question, right? Yeah, I've got something I want to hack on tomorrow, so
It's like
we can.
anything that's worth bringing up in your talk.
Yeah, I mean, well, like I said, the status thing is a simple REST call to the API that our status site alone speaks, right? So it doesn't work for anybody else's status site. But it's really simple. It's one rest call. We can talk. You can talk to Will Farrington. He's in the back over there from GitHub. He wrote it. Yeah. Yeah, we'll go green on status before we even think about postmortem. We go green when we're pretty confident the site is stable again. So that's when we'll go green. I don't even like to promise that we're going to write a postmortem because I'm not. This is where we get to art versus science again, right? Where I don't have a good heuristic to determine whether or not, and maybe it's because I haven't thought about it hard enough, whether or not there should be a public statement written or not. I think it's one of those things where I know it when I see it right now. But we try not to publish them until we have a pretty thorough understanding of the problem. And generally that's pretty quick, right? Generally that's no more than 2 or 3 or 4 days after the event. If it goes longer than that, this is actually interesting too. I think that this one's actually a little weird. It's a little contentious, and I'm split on this one. If it takes more than 3 or 4 days to get to a thorough enough understanding to write a postmortem, let's say it takes 2 weeks. 2 weeks after the event, is it worth writing the postmortem? I think it depends on the event, but most times I'm inclined not to write it if it goes on that long. And I guess if I'm being honest, it's not about transparency at that point. It's about just pouring salt into a wound that's already been closed. But I've written ones that have taken a while to get to, but I try to avoid it. I guess in those cases, I try to write a postmortem relatively early and say we don't necessarily know all the problems, but these are the things we're investigating further, and let people know what's going on as quickly as we can. Yeah.
How do you handle the inevitable, or how long are we going to take to fix things? So the discovery phase, I have no idea how long it's going to take.
Yeah, so the question is, how do we handle, when we're talking about remediation items, how long it's going to take us to remediate a problem while we're still trying to figure that out. We just don't promise dates on those kinds of things, right? We say we're working on this, and we think it's going to take about this long, but we don't know. Or we just don't say, we just say we're working on it. We try to attach timelines to it when we can, but if we can't, we can't. Yeah. Okay, last question. Anybody else? Yeah.
What are your thoughts on how this type of messaging might change if you were a publicly held company and you do have some controls in place around public messaging and going to the question before what the lawyers will let you say?
Yeah, so the question is, how do I think this would be affected if we were a publicly traded company? When I was at Heroku, we were a subsidiary of a publicly traded company, and I just wrote them, and nobody fired me. I think it depends a lot on the company culture. I think at GitHub, if we ever get to the point where the lawyers are saying, I can't be honest to my customers, I'm going to quit. And I don't think that'll ever happen. But at companies that aren't that open, I'm sorry. I don't really have a good answer to that one. You just kind of have to do what your organization will let you do. What the business allows, what the legalities allow, what the liability allows. I try not to think too much about those things.
There's examples, right? Like Amazon writes pretty thorough postmortems for their bigger outages, and they give my favorite is when they say, and then we directed traffic to the wrong network.
Yeah, I mean,
that's pretty damning, and they were able to admit to it. So
the limits of your liability there are pretty much spelled out in your SLA most of the time, and most SLAs are garbage, so it's usually okay.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah.
One thing that we found out is don't post your status page on your main website.
Yeah. Yeah, that one goes without saying. Don't host your status site on your production infrastructure. And don't host it on Tumblr either. Thank